Here in the Tomini Bay, the charts show few marked anchorages. There's no pilot or cruising guide with a nice list of places to drop the hook, and this seldom visited area isn't on any regular sailing passage. So how do we know where to anchor? With capricious winds and currents, we needed all our skills and experience to find a safe place to drop the hook in such a remote part of Sulawesi.
So long that I'm scared I can't sit down. Seem like the more I fly, the more they try to take me down.
Okay, it's channel day today. This is where we go through this cut through, which we've no idea if we can successfully negotiate or not, but we're going to give it a go. It's a little bit cloudy today, which is of course not ideal for looking out for reefs and things, but yeah, let's see how we get on.
This looks like a river. It looks very much like the Togean and other rivers that we've seen, but in fact it is just a channel between the various islands here in the Togeans. We can't see very much through the water, so Jamie's having to rely on some satellite images which got a few clouds on them and charts that we know are not quite right. So a little bit anxious coming through here, but we saw a big ferry come down last night, went through, so we reckon if he can get through, we can get through. Anyway, the channel itself is a real slice of local life. One or two settlements, little villages. We just passed what looks like a small ferry stop, just baby boats, just for local people. Those that we pass wave and shout. And then the scenery it's pretty much mangroves the entire way, with rainforest behind. I'm trying to look through the water as well as I can, just in case there are any boulders or anything down there, but we've got around 10 metres most of the way, so that's pretty good. The other thing I'm on the lookout for is crocodiles, because there are crocodiles in the Togean.
So that's the cut through done. It was fairly straightforward actually. The chart is fairly accurate, surprisingly. It even showed a couple of rocks which the locals have very kindly put markers on, so it's always good to see your chart data and what the locals are saying tallies. The people here use a local guidance system. It has absolutely nothing to do with the coal regs. They're systems that you wouldn't recognise, but they still make sense. So they put a tool stick up and then they have two balls. One is red on one side and one is white on the other, and it simply means don't cross over on the red side, cross over on the white side. And they've been conveniently stuck on various edges of various reefs through the entrance and exit, so that was pretty good. So we're just going to motor along here now, and we've got some very interesting reefs. I'll put an overlay on the screen for you to have a look at to see what we're contending with, but basically the whole of this south coast is just littered with rocks and reefs and shoals, and we've got to pass over one of them, which the satellite image looks pretty scary, but the charts say 5 metres. So we're just going to stick our nose in and see if we can get over this reef, because this will really help us. Otherwise we're going to have to do a bit of a detour. Overcast day, but otherwise quite a few fishing boats out getting up to their usual business, and also interesting to see another little village right in the middle of that river as well. They too have 4G connection. I go on about 4G connection because I'm so paranoid about the weather. I'm just keeping an eye on it. There's quite a bit of wind blowing up the coast and into Tomini Bay, so that's something we need to keep an eye on. We can actually just make out mainland over in the west there, which is quite encouraging as well. Right, we're just coming up to this very shallow reef. We're down to 36 metres. We can see something. The sunlight isn't great for spotting the reef, but we know where it is according to the satellite, and chart datum shows 5 metres minimum, so let's keep our fingers crossed. We're going to take it very slow, but I'm going to put the camera away now and just take it easy. Phew, made it. Depth got down to 6 metres. Liz was on the front spotting and could clearly see the rocks underneath, despite the visibility today. So we're now going to just creep our way up into, I don't know, I'm kind of hoping it's shallow enough to drop the hook somewhere in this sort of little fjord area. We're just going to poke our nose in. There's a few more rocks and reefs to work our way around before we get there. Well, this is a neat little anchorage we've found here. It's stunning. And like I said, it's sort of fjord-like, but we're completely protected except from the south. And hopefully, if anything does blow up from there, we've got the reef in front of us to protect us as well. So 22 metres. There's a few fishing boats around, as you can probably hear in the background, buzzing around. It's obviously a popular spot with the locals. Well, no sooner did we turn the engine off, but the sun has just managed to break through the clouds. Could have done with that earlier, going over that reef, but yeah, nice spot. This is such a great spot. There's a few curious fishermen knocking about. No doubt they'll come and say hello and probably try and sell us some fish. And yeah, what else is there to say other than I wish we could spend a week at this anchorage. We don't have time to do that, but we are going to make the most of the next, 18 hours at anchor here. Right, we are off on a 30-mile trip today to a little island out in the middle of nowhere. I have just managed to get a forecast and it's pretty much the same. It's pretty squally, light winds. Last night at anchor, after the sun went down, we got a pretty vicious squall come through. It seemed to come from the north, but we've got these sort of easterly winds blowing across Tomini Bay, so can't quite work that out, but we'll just have to wait and see when we get to the next anchorage, if it is actually an anchorage, because the chart reckons it is, but satellite images are a bit sketchy for this little bay that we're trying to aim towards. So it's suck it and see today. Well, I suppose we say goodbye to the Togean Islands. It's been bloody marvellous. Cannot recommend it enough. If you find yourself in this direction, then try and time your visas so that you can spend quite a bit of time here, because there are anchorages everywhere. That last anchorage in particular, we didn't anchor as far in as we could have done. I think if we'd stayed a few days, we would have pushed right in up against the fringes of the fjord, I keep calling it. But yeah, it's truly a remarkable place. Just wonderful, absolutely. And it's such a shame that we've got to push on, but pushing on we are, with a little bit of a light northerly at the moment. That's not in the forecast, but I think that's just residual from the weather that's been passing over the top across the Tomini Bay. And we've got one more reef to exit out of here, and then it's a long run across over to Pulau Puat, P-O-A-T. And that's where we find out whether we can anchor there or not.
So we left the Togean. Did we say Togean or Togean? I can never remember now. Yeah, the Togean Islands, we finally left them this morning, and we're on our way south now. First stop, Pulau Puat, something like that. About 25 miles away from here, and we've got the engine off, we've got the Kraken out. There's about 8 to 9 knots of wind, and we're making 3.5 to 4 knots, so that's not bad. Yeah, so the Togeans were an extraordinary set of islands. Would love to have spent a couple of months going around there. Reminded me very much of the Anambas. The main difference being they've got some resorts there and diving, you know, a bit more sophisticated in some respects, but in other ways very much like the Anambas. Very simple way of life there. Utterly beautiful. Recommend it. Togean Islands, if you get a chance, go.
So we're getting now just about 4.5 knots under the Kraken, which is nice. I think I said this could just be residual wind from passing systems that have gone through, but we'll make the most of it. Now Liz says we're going to Pulau Pua, and I said Pulau Poat. And this is unfortunately one of the problems with Navionics. We find that Navionics frequently gets the names wrong of islands. So quite often we're putting in the logbook a location based on what Navionics is telling us, and then we try and research it and we find that it doesn't exist. So according to locals, it's Poat, P-O-A-T. Liz was just saying how we haven't seen anything aquatic today, and then 5 minutes later we're seeing some big dorsal fins appearing on the surface of the water just over there between us and the island. They look too big for normal dolphins, so possibly pilot whales. So this is the island of Poat, looking at the south side, and I've sent Liz up on the bow because the chart says there are rocks somewhere here and then we've got a big reef running down there, so I'm just going to give these rocks a wide berth, but just also getting Liz to spot for us just before we turn in up towards the village. So you can probably see the reef behind me, which we're trying to tuck behind. Unfortunately it does this. So we're very close to 25 metres, and yet we're only 100 metres from the reef itself. Prevailing squalls appear to come from the north, which is there, which would blow us that way. So we're just really having to think about this. I think we may have to drop in 30 further out.
Well, we've anchored very deeply with a lot of coral around us. So as long as the weather holds, we'll be absolutely fine. But if we get any weird wind or anything odd in the night, we're both going to be up not sleeping. Anyway, it's very pretty apart from that.
Well, I have to say, that was one of the best night's sleep I've had in ages, which surprised me actually, because I normally would have gone to bed worried about trying to get the anchor up this morning, because when we set the anchor yesterday it was bouncing quite a lot. I think, as Liz says, there's probably rocks down there, and you know, we've moved around a bit as well. There was a couple of squalls last night that didn't quite hit us, so the boat's been moving around a little, so I went to bed just a bit concerned about trying to get the anchor up, which we're about to find out now if there is a problem or not, whether the chain is wrapped around something. We're heading over there. Behind me is some rather splendid coastline, and if you were to look on a map of Sulawesi, this is the bit in the middle that sticks out into the middle in a kind of knob shape. Have a look, you'll know what I mean. But unlike the rest of the coast that we've done so far, there isn't much going on here, at least as far as we can tell. And looking at the charts and the maps, the satellite images, there aren't as many big towns here. Now there are further into Tomini Bay. You've got some big towns there, a couple of port towns. But as we approach this peninsula around the tip here, there are a few settlements, but there's nothing particularly significant until we get around the corner.
Well, that was the island of Poat, or Pua if you're watching on Navionics. Anyway, whatever it's called, it gave me the best night's sleep I've had this year. When we arrived and dropped the anchor, I slept for about 3 hours in the cockpit. Then went down below, slept for another 2 hours, got up because I felt I can't really stay asleep all day. Managed to scrape myself back together in the cockpit, went to sleep again. gave up, went back to bed, slept till 5. So thank you, Poat, for providing me with the best night's sleep I've ever had. And I think one of the reasons is that it's incredibly quiet there. I mean, almost eerily quiet. Most of these islands, you hear sounds going on the shore. And there was a masjid, a mosque, but it seemed to have been turned off. There was nobody at home because we didn't hear any calls to prayer throughout the evening or the morning. So no one home in the mosque, not many people probably in the village. There were a few small fishermen, well, or average-sized fishermen in small boats that came past with very loud engines as normal. But other than that, it was most strangely quiet. Thank you for the sleep.
I've just spotted our first AIS target. First one I've seen since, oh God knows, when we crossed Tomini Bay to the Togeans. We saw a ferry and that was it. Interestingly, for me as a navigator anyway, is that the previous coastline that's going up north to the corner of Sulawesi, very few places to anchor, even though there are quite a few big towns there. The coastline is pretty unforgiving in terms of shallows and what have you. But this bit here that sticks out, this is the knob that sticks out. This coastline appears to be, according to the charts, all anchorable because it's shallows. However, with that comes many more rocks and reefs. And in fact, as we make our way across to the top corner there are lots of reefs, even out here in 100 meters or so. The other issue, of course, is the weather and the current. Now, don't forget, of course, that we are in the southeast monsoon, so what tends to happen is the winds will come up sort of due north and sort of curve around this corner. So at the moment we've got a light southerly, which is all very well as we're heading eastwards, but as we turn this corner, that might present a slightly more unsettled sea. Honestly, don't know. And also we've got current with us at the moment, which is quite nice. And again, I'm not sure what happens around that corner. I suspect we're going to have current against us as that massive sea gets pushed up by those southerlies. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as we go around this corner. But anyway, the point is that there's quite a few contingencies here, but in terms of navigating into these bays, they can be quite difficult, and there isn't much protection other than from the south. So if we get a squall coming in from the north, we're totally open to it.
Went down below just to make the morning coffee, leaving Jamie at the wheel and nothing happening much, and then I came back up and now look.
Wahoo! Leave my filleting knife though.
So that's good, isn't it? That means we've got food for the next week. Another wahoo! We love Sulawesi, it keeps giving us wahoos. What do you think of that then?
Yeah, good man. I couldn't be bothered to fillet, it's much easier to cut steaks, but actually steaks are easier to cook as well, aren't they? So
Same difference.
yeah, well that'll keep us going for a few days.
Yeah.
Well done. Well, we've just passed one tug, and also you can hear on the radio. This is the first time I have heard anyone on the radio on Channel 16, in months I think. So we've got another tug ahead of us, so he's doing about 2 knots. And I guess as we go around the corner we're going to start seeing more of this. Nothing unusual about that, it's just been so peculiar having spent the last few weeks around Tomini Bay and, well, even from before Lembe, there wasn't much marine traffic at all. Gonna have to readjust, getting back to civilization.
Approaching mainland once more, we're now officially in central Sulawesi. The land is different, the coastline is different, and the depths are different. With its small white sandy islands, this area is unlike anything we've encountered here so far. It shallows gradually, offering us plenty of options for anchoring.
Been moving around for so long that I'm scared I can't sit down. Seem like the more I fly, the more they try to take me down.
However, we must remain mindful of squalls, which will most likely appear at night while at anchor in those open bays. Finding local fishing boats tied to moorings is an encouraging sign. It means the sea state can't get too bad to anchor here. But this is mostly because we're in the current southeast monsoon season. At a different time of year, this entire coastline would be untenable. But as you can see, we are the only boat at anchor for literally hundreds of miles.